Hey, what's up, guys? My name is Nathan Garland.
And I'm Daryl Flanagan. We're the group known as Revelation. Today, we had the privilege of coming to Russell Springs United Methodist Church, and Nathan actually gave a talk, and we are fixing to do a Q&A.
Yeah, and so basically where we're in the student life room, and they're hosting an event called Prepare for Battle. And I won't go into much detail about it. I'll just kind of explain what it is. It's basically teaching young men how to live a godly life and the goal to strive to be like God. And so that's just basically what it's about. And so now we're going to do this Q&A. We've actually gotten a few questions. So we're going to answer just a couple. And so the reason there's three of us, we have Dustin Gosser and Jeff Brummett up here. And both of them have been these huge influences in both of our lives, been mentors for us. And so, since it is like this kind of like this pathway to purity, you're going to get three different aspects. Me as like a teenager, Dustin as a single man, and Jeff as a married man. And so you're going to get these different aspects on what we think about certain things. And so without further ado, let's kick it off.
Alrighty, question one. Is dating okay?
To me personally as a teenager, I think it is okay, but you have to understand though, in order for you to be able to date, you've got to be in a good relationship with Christ, and Christ has got to be in the middle of that relationship, or it's just going to fall to pieces from the get-go. Like, I've seen that happen. And, I really think that you should not date, though, without the intention of marrying that person. That's what I believe. As long as you have the right mindset about it, and you have this, boundaries kind of talk thing, and you set that in line and make sure that it's like a triangle, we're both striving towards God. I think it is okay then, at that point.
So for a teenager who isn't really close with God, what would you tell them to do?
Well, number one, if you aren't close to God, I would recommend get in that relationship with God before you get in a relationship with a girl. That's what I personally believe. Dustin, what do you think as a single man?
Yeah, I think Nathan's answer is pretty good. I would say that it really boils down and it really comes down to what kind of maturity level you were at, and the person that you might be pursuing or the person that you might want to date, their maturity level as well. And as Nathan spoke to, your personal relationship with Jesus and theirs. I think that I have seen, in regards to youth in particular, I have seen far too many dating relationships that probably shouldn't be happening because one or both of those people are not ready for that. And that can lead to a lot of dangerous things. That can lead to going down the path of leading into a lot of things that obviously we try to avoid as Christians, and things that we want to try to pursue whenever we're pursuing a pure life.
Right.
So I would strongly encourage people to make sure that they are at the point where they're both, physically and mentally mature enough, and again, that they do have a strong personal relationship with Jesus, so that whenever they do, go down that road, they are heading in the right direction.
Right. And so, Jeff, what is your take as a married man?
Well, Nathan, I'm glad you asked the question. Lee, what it really comes down to is this. Asking two questions. Number one, why do I want to date in the first place? Mm-hmm. Ask yourself that question, why? What is your motive behind wanting to date? But I think a deeper question we need to ask ourselves is, how does this relationship bring glory to God? Mm-hmm. That's one thing we've got to ask if we're going to get deep into the heart of the matter. The Bible speaks clearly about being unequally yoked, and that can speak not just in dating, but friendships, or really any type of relationship. And if that relationship doesn't bring you any closer to God, then honestly, that's not a relationship to be in. But first and foremost, you've got to pray about it, and it really needs to be of God's will before that relationship can happen. Otherwise, it just doesn't have a chance. And personally, I don't want to be in a relationship with anyone that keeps me from God and doing His work and being at the center of His will.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And if I may add to that, I think a lot of times as Christians, as young Christian people, we think God is going to just drop this perfect person out of heaven for us, and they're going to appear right in front of us. It's going to be this magical thing. But I would encourage people to just open up this book and look at what it says. Look at what it says a man of God should be. Look at what it says a woman of God should be.
Right.
Because the reality is, in this book, only on two instances did God tell somebody to marry someone. He gives us the choice. And with that comes the responsibility of finding someone, just as Jeff mentioned, that we are equally yoked to. Someone that has the same goals, someone that has the same, influence, someone that has the same personal relationship with Jesus. We have to be diligent in choosing that. We can't just be lax and just date anyone that comes along. But we do have a choice, but we have to take responsibility of that choice and make sure that we are finding people to attach ourselves to that is going to bring us closer to Jesus ourselves.
Right.
Jeff, Nathan, would you like to add anything on?
I think we all have agreed on the same thing, that like in order to have that healthy relationship, you first have to have a relationship with Christ. Like it has to be Christ-centered. Like that's what it boils down to.
Question number 2. Is it wrong to question God?
I think there's a fine line of kind of, I don't know how to phrase it. Help me on this. Is, questioning like, why is this going on versus, like are you seriously like doing this, like testing maybe, I would say. Like there's a fine line of questioning and testing. I think it's okay to question, but as long as you don't let it get to you and you don't let that in your relationship with Christ become an issue, because like it's different for everybody, because like some people it could be things like like God, like why is the sun like yellow, something like that. But to others it could be God, like why did you let this happen to me? Like there's two different stories to this. And so like I think like you have to be very careful with like how you're questioning it. But another thing is your relationship with Christ, because if it's not in you, if it's not really that great, and then one thing happens to you and you start questioning, it's done. Like you're just going to be done. But if you're like really on fire and like burning for Him, I think you would be okay to ask some things. That's like, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a really broad question that could mean a lot of different things. To me personally, in regards to the questioning God on why bad things happen in life, or questioning Him as to why His plan may include bad things for good people or whatnot, I think our answer to that is as some of the things we've talked about tonight, hiding the Word in your heart and really learning to take hold of the promises of God. I think of Romans 8:28 and how God says in all things, God works for the good of those who love Him and are called according to His purpose. And that's a promise of God. And if we're able to grab a hold of that, we can take hope in these bad times, in these tough situations that arise, because we can know and truly believe in our hearts that in this situation, it may not be a good situation, it may be a hard situation, but in this, God is using it for His glory and for His goodness and for my good, even though I may not be able to see that, and I may not ever see it here.
Right.
But I just think that by hiding the promises of God in our heart, and there's so many all throughout the Bible of things that God has promised us, and by doing that, we begin to get to a place where we can not question Him as much in regards to the bad things that happen. But I will also say, I do think it is important to, as Paul calls it, to work out your own faith, to examine these things. One of my favorite things to listen to are testimonies of atheists that become Christians because they set out to prove God wrong. Mm-hmm. And whatever they find is enough to convince them that, man, it takes more faith for me to be an atheist than it does for me to be a Christian. Yeah. And that all started with questioning God. So sometimes, by questioning and making sure we understand why we believe what we believe, apologetics, things of that nature, I just really think that understanding those things, understanding why we believe what we believe, questioning some of this stuff, and as you learn those answers, it just strengthens your faith to a point to where you can even defend it against people that may come against you.
Mm-hmm. And it's like, just to piggyback on what Dustin has said, a lot of times our questions comes from like things like our trials and tribulations, just the hurts and the pains that we have in life. And I'm looking right here at James chapter 1, verse 5, and I love to share this with you. If any of you lacks in wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. Mm-hmm. So, it's okay to ask God questions and questioning Him, what is going on. If you're coming at it with a pure heart and coming with the intentions of really wanting to gain that answer, and just to seek His will, then absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But at the same time, going back to what Dustin has said, that's a broad question. You know, who's it coming from? Is this coming from someone who's a Christian, or are we talking about someone who is an unbeliever? You know,
Right.
trying to find out, does God? Are you really out there, God? Do you really exist?
Yeah.
So that is a very broad question.
Yeah, and so, like, unfortunately, we are running out of time. We did want to just at least just give you a little glimpse of things that have been discussed tonight, just a little glimpse of what we are about. And so we would like to thank Russell Springs United Methodist Church for allowing us to come and giving me the privilege to speak, giving Daryl and I the privilege to host this. And we thank you all so much for listening and watching. And if you have any comments about anything that any of us three have said, any questions that's been asked, just please comment down below. We love to hear what you think. And so we'll see you all next time.